my husband made $10,000 from what I did to the janitor at the coffee shop where I worked as a barista. My name is Elena. I'm 48, and for the past 14 years, I've been married to a man who believes life is only worth living if you keep raising the stakes. Mark is the kind of man who reads the financial section for fun and bets on horse races just to feel something. We have a beautiful life, a house tucked into the hills, weekends in Aspen, a fridge that speaks French when it opens. But even beauty, when too carefully arranged, begins to feel like a showroom. And I, somewhere along the way, stopped feeling like a wife and started feeling like a perfectly placed lamp in the corner, always on, never noticed. We didn't fight. We didn't laugh. We didn't even sigh at the same time anymore. Mark would glance at me while scrolling through his endless feeds and say, "You good?" And I'd nod, knowing it wasn't a question. It was a formality, like signing a receipt. Our conversations had become that brief acknowledgments of shared space. And yet, Mark never stopped being curious. Not about me, but about the world, the edges of things, the moments when people show who they are when no one's watching. It's what made him successful, I suppose. He could sniff out a bluff or a lie like a wolf. But he grew bored easily. Success dulled his appetite, and lately, his thrills came from watching others stumble. I had taken a part-time job at a cozy, tucked-away coffee shop. Not for the money, we didn't need it, but for the silence. The kind that comes with steam wands and soft jazz and regulars who smiled without demanding anything more. The owners were kind, the pay was modest, and the floors needed mopping twice a day. That's where I met Joseph. Joseph wasn't someone you'd notice right away. Older, maybe 70, maybe more. His shoulders curved inward like a closing book, but his eyes still had paragraphs left in them. He was the janitor. Quiet, methodical, always in beige. The kind of man who made you feel like time slowed when he entered a room. He never called me by name, never flirted, never crossed a line. But he lingered. At first, I thought it was just part of the job. But then I noticed he'd clean tables near me even when others were messy. He'd pause when I dropped something, but not rush to pick it up, just wait, as though watching me bend was its own form of reverence. And when he did speak, it was always just one notch too intimate. "You always close your eyes when you laugh," he said once, his voice low. "Means you're not just laughing. You're remembering something." I blinked, unsure how to respond. "Maybe. I don't notice." He nodded, more to himself than to me. And then there was Mark. He had started stopping by the cafe in the late afternoons, always just as the sun filtered in through the front glass. He didn't order anything, just stood with his arms folded, watching me like I was on stage. He'd smirk sometimes. Other times he'd frown, as if studying a painting he wasn't sure he liked. One day, I handed a cappuccino to a regular and turned around to find Mark seated at the corner table. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching Joseph. I walked over, wiping my hands on my apron. "You're early." Mark didn't look up. He tapped the table twice, a habit of his when a thought clicked into place. Then he leaned back and crossed his legs. "That old man likes you." I sighed. "He's polite. That's all." He finally looked at me then, and his eyes were sharp, amused, but cold. 10,000 says he won't dare. Won't dare what? Try to kiss you. I stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or be furious. "Mark, that's not funny." He tilted his head, like a mathematician considering an equation. "No, it's not funny. It's a bet. I talked to him already. Said I'd give him 10 grand if he kissed you. Said it had to be real." "You're lying." He just shrugged. "You didn't." "Why not? It's just a game." "He won't even try." I walked away. My hands were shaking as I pulled a fresh espresso shot. That evening, Joseph didn't speak to me, but his glances were heavier, slower. And from the back room, I saw Mark leave, whistling. The next day, Joseph stayed after closing. He didn't say much, just mopped the same section twice. I was wiping the counter. The shop was quiet. I could hear the thud of his shoes. He stood behind me, a respectful distance. "Your husband's a gambler," he said, not asking. I froze. "Yes." He nodded. "He thinks this is a game." I turned. "Isn't it?" Joseph looked at me, and for the first time, I felt how deeply I had underestimated him. Not for me. Then he left. The week that followed was quiet. He didn't stay late. He didn't linger. But the silence between us stretched like a drawn curtain. I found myself fixing my hair before each shift. I wore perfume again. I touched my lips more often. And I hated myself for all of it. I told Mark to stop coming by the shop. He said he wouldn't interfere, that the bet would expire on its own, that Joseph was too timid. But one night, the back room lights were dim. The front door was locked, and Joseph didn't leave right away. I was closing the register when I felt him near me. Not too close, but closer than usual. He said my name. First time. "Elena." I turned slowly. "He thinks I can't do it," he said quietly. "But he doesn't know I've wanted to for months." "I should go," I whispered. But my feet didn't move. He looked down at the floor, then at me. "Do you want me to?" I didn't answer. He stepped forward, paused. His eyes asked one more time, and I didn't say no. He leaned in, gentle and hesitant. I didn't move. And in that suspended second, I forgot everything, the bet, the camera, even my name. And I stayed still. Mark had installed the camera 3 days earlier. The coffee tasted burnt the next morning. Or maybe it was just me. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I lay in bed beside Mark, barely breathing, watching the dark ceiling shift from gray to blue to soft orange as the sun began to rise. My body was still, but my mind wouldn't stop screaming. Mark didn't say anything when I crawled beneath the sheets. He didn't turn to look at me, didn't ask where I'd been, didn't even shift when I came in. Just breathed slowly, rhythmically, as if he'd known all along. The coffee I made the next morning sat in the pot untouched. I poured a cup anyway. I stared at it for a long time, steam curling upward like guilt, then let it go cold. I went through the motions: hairbrush, mascara, toast crumbs on the counter, but everything felt slow. Waited, like I was trying to walk through water. Mark came into the kitchen around 8. He looked refreshed, his usual cool detachment in place. He kissed my cheek absent-mindedly and reached for his phone. "Busy day?" he asked without looking up. I stared at him, my throat tight. "Probably." He nodded. "Don't forget to smile. People tip more when you smile." I wanted to scream. I wanted to say something sharp enough to slice through the stillness he'd created around himself. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew he was already a step ahead of me. At the coffee shop, Joseph wasn't there. I tried not to notice, but my eyes drifted toward the mop closet, toward the back room. His name pulsed beneath my skin like a heartbeat. By the time my shift ended, I had almost convinced myself it wasn't real, that the kiss hadn't happened, that maybe somehow it hadn't been recorded. Until I got home. Mark was in the living room. The curtains were drawn, the lights dimmed, the television was on mute, and on the screen, paused and crystal clear, was my face. Eyes closed, lips parted. A second before everything changed. I stood frozen in the doorway. He didn't look at me, just said, "He waited for you." Hours. I watched the whole thing. I couldn't speak. "You didn't stop him," he added, as if I didn't already know. As if I hadn't replayed it 100 times in my head since. "You set it up," I said softly. "You planned it." He finally turned to me. I didn't think he had it in him. There was a long silence. "Did you want him to?" Mark asked. I swallowed. Does it matter? $10,000 says it does. The way he said it, flat, amused, like it was still just a game, made something inside me crack. Not in anger, but in exhaustion. You used me, I said. You turned me into a bet. You made the bet real, he replied. I gave him the chance. You gave him the answer. He got up, walked to the side table, and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was the money. I recognized the bills. Crisp, folded with precision. He came by this morning, Mark said, handing it to me. Took the cash. Didn't gloat. Just nodded and left. Where is he now? Does it matter? I didn't answer. A week passed. Then 2. I kept going to the coffee shop, but Joseph didn't return. They hired someone new, younger, louder. The mop bucket sat in the corner, untouched. Mark barely spoke to me, but he didn't leave either. He carried on like everything was fine, like we were still intact. One night, I opened my laptop and found the file still saved on the desktop. I didn't open it, I stared at it. I hovered over delete, but I couldn't. Not yet. 3 weeks after the kiss, I saw Joseph again. He was sitting on a bench near the park, feeding the birds. His clothes were the same. His posture a little more bent. But his face lit up when he saw me. You look tired, he said gently. I sat beside him. We didn't speak for a while. Why did you do it? I asked. He looked at the crumbs in his palm. Because I wanted to, and because he thought I wouldn't. You won the money. He nodded. I gave most of it to my daughter. She's struggling. I looked down. I didn't stop you. I know. Did that mean something to you? Or was it just victory? He turned to me then, and his eyes were heavy with something I couldn't quite name. It meant something, but I don't know what to do with it. Neither did I. I moved out 2 weeks later. Mark didn't argue. He didn't cry. He didn't even ask where I was going. Just signed the papers, handed me my keys, and said, well played. I didn't move in with Joseph. That would have been too neat, too clean. Instead, I rented a small apartment near the river. The windows stuck in the winter. The floor creaked. But it was mine. Joseph visited sometimes. Brought tea. Talked about the birds. We didn't kiss again. Not because we didn't want to, but because that one kiss had already taken up too much space. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Mark. About the way he set the whole thing in motion, like a man watching dominoes fall. And sometimes, I wonder if he ever really loved me. But mostly, I wonder if I ever really loved myself enough to walk away sooner.